everyone, this is just a quick update in the aftermath of the US inauguration. Just a few thoughts that I had that I thought I'd try and share with you. Now, a few weeks ago it was that I wrote this article and it was called Trump, Q, the Stolen US Election and the Insurrection Act. And this was really in response to a few emails and messages and postings that have been sent to me and so forth. In relation to this particular video by Simon Parkes, which was a claim in which he made this claim that Trump had signed the Insurrection Act and Biden and all his associates were going to be arrested on Inauguration Day. I mean, I might be slightly misquoting him, but that was the gist of it. And there were a couple of other reports that were saying the same thing. I made a posting on Facebook about this, but not the Simon Parkes video. Because I have been very sceptical about the information coming from him, because as you'll read in my article here, if I go down and show you just quickly here, I actually met Simon Parkes a couple of times back in 2013 when he and I were both asked to speak at conferences and whatnot. And he actually came to a presentation that I gave to a small group in Hull, which was called 9/11 Finding the Truth. And if you're not familiar with the 9/11 research that I've been involved with, then please do have a look at that. Links are in this article. It's on the website, of course. But anyway, the long and the short of that, without giving all the details, was that Simon Parkes attended my 9/11 presentation. He complimented me on it. And afterwards, it ended up that we were staying at the same house, so I chatted to him for a couple of hours late into the night. He told me about his intelligence service connections and showed me various things, quite interesting. And he seemed to take on board what I told him about 9/11 and the fact that it wasn't, to do with thermite or bombs in the building that destroyed the World Trade Center. It was actually a directed energy weapon, and I went through the court case of Dr. Judy Wood and various things. And he seemed, quite okay with that. He didn't challenge me. He didn't sort of react as some people do with disbelief. He seemed to sort of take it in his stride and thank me for sort of discussing it with him. And that sort of thing. Friendly conversation, no animosity, no challenges, no arguments. But then I was told that a few months later, in September that year, he did a presentation at another club, actually in Birmingham, and then he actually said that the World Trade Center was destroyed with thermite and bombs, which I told him deliberately that wasn't the case. So why was he repeating that false information, which I explained to him why it was false, etc., etc. So make your own minds up on that one. Similar story with Robert David Steele, who was also putting out Simon Parkes information and saying that Trump had signed the Insurrection Act. And similar things coming from Charlie Freak as well. So yes, and also there's been putting out certain information in relation to Q is Charlie Ward. Now he's an interesting chap, not quite sure what to think of him. He seems like a lovely guy, and as somebody said to me, he seems like a fast show character, and that made me smile because that's quite an appropriate description. Is he putting out genuine information? Well, some of it seems to be accurate, but I'm not sure of it entirely. But what did surprise me was that he was actually interviewed on January the 18th by James Dellingpole, who was actually quite a well-regarded journalist I think he wrote for The Guardian quite a bit, but he was chucked from doing that a while ago, and he's gone down the rabbit hole a bit now, so it's worth checking that out. It's quite an interesting interview, and Charlie Ward does give a bit of information about his background. Charlie Ward says he went to prison and stuff. He seems like an honest chap, so I'm not quite sure what to make of him. But what I wanted to go through really was what I think might be happening based on stuff that's been sent to me in terms of, all these links that you see mentioned in this article and others as well that I haven't put in here. And this idea of Trump draining the swamp as well. And if you haven't already read this article, please go and read it. And it's the one that I wrote back in September, which was an article called The QAnon Phenomenon, and I go through the QOQ sort of story and evidence there. Very, very interesting to me. I'm not saying I believe everything about it, but I can tell you from having put this article together that you should have a look at Martin Geddes. he also noted a couple of examples of disinformation that's been put out about Q, things that have been attributed to Q but haven't been said by Q. And if you want to get into that more, then I recommend you have a listen to some of this chap's videos, X22 Report. I don't know much about the guy, but he's quite interesting. He does intersperse his videos with adverts. But it's an interesting set of thoughts he has. He doesn't say this is all true. He's just, again, trying to do what I'm doing, which is taking in the postings, mainstream media links, and so forth, and trying to make sense of it all, looking at the backdrop and the history and so forth. And I think he does a fairly good job of that, and I found it interesting and enjoyable to listen to this chap. Going back to Simon Parkes, though, I think this gives us an example of Simon Parkes is really doing what politicians do, and he's telling us what we want to hear. He's sort of like a politician, and in fact he was a local councillor. But the problem is that when he makes a mistake, and he's clearly been mistaken about what he said about the Insurrection Act and stuff, we can clearly see that now, he doesn't go back and say, oh, I was wrong about that, I don't know why, this information was wrong, or I've found this new... He doesn't explain why he was wrong, and it's the same as David Icke in this regard. He doesn't explain why he was wrong. So, make of that what you will. You can look at Simon Parkes on his website and see that Simon's mother, according to him, worked for MI5. And he apparently she was working for the NSA as well, and his father was involved as a British. Well, you can read it here. I'm not going to read it all out. You can read it all on this website and make of it what you will. But some red flags there, definitely. So what really is going on in the US? We've seen, for example, the inauguration ceremony. I didn't watch all of it. I did watch a bit of it on silent. I didn't have the audio on, and I noticed, for example, we saw Bush, Clinton, and Obama at Biden's inauguration. So it looks like the three big crooks are all together celebrating and getting the next crook into the Oval Office, etc. But going back to this idea of the Insurrection Act and what's really going on, it is, of course, very interesting. We cannot deny that Washington, D.C. has been in lockdown, and the National Guard were brought in, I think, 20,000 troops. You've probably read some of these reports or listened to them. So clearly some very, very strange things have been going on in Washington, D.C. And somebody posted this article this morning, which has been written by Diane Marshall, the Marshall Report, and you can see here it says DC is fenced off and the president is never going back to the White House, but not for reasons you may be thinking. And of course we had this whole creepy thing with everyone wearing masks. You saw you've probably seen the pictures from the inauguration. Oh, it's horrible thing. But what this article points out, for example, is this situation that the US was actually a corporation, and it was formed, the Corporation of the United States of America, and I think it was formed in 1871 or something. It's discussed in this article, and the take that Diane Marshall has on this is that Trump has basically left the White House. He won't return, because what it now is, as people know, and this is true, Washington, D.C. means District of Columbia. It's like a state within a state. And as it shows in the article here, and I've known this for a while, maybe you have too, that, for example, we have the Vatican. That's a state within a state, and it's got its own flag. There's a Washington, D.C. flag. And then, of course, we have the flag of the City of London shown in this article. So the City of London is also a state within a state. So the article sort of goes through the basics of that, and how each of these countries is essentially also a corporation, and we are all born, and then we are actually used as assets for that corporation, because of your birth certificate and all of that. And so the claim is that Trump has now walked out of that, and the White House is now in the middle of DC, and it's it's fenced off because it's an illegal occupation. It's a legal state within a state. And so it's all in lockdown. And then it has a couple of highlights here of this Chinese guy. I don't know who this is, but why they're attending this ceremony. We can ask those questions. Lady Gaga, of course, with the satanic connections of that. And again, if you listen to Trump's farewell address, I include all these links in the description so you can have a look. But it is quite unusual what he says at the end. I'll actually play this for you. You can go and listen to it for yourself.
This is a republic of proud citizens who are united by our common conviction that America is the greatest nation in all of history. We are and must always be a land of hope, of light, and of glory to all the world. This is the precious inheritance that we must safeguard at every single turn. For the past 4 years, I have worked to do just that. From a great hall of Muslim leaders in Riyadh to a great square of Polish people in Warsaw, from the floor of the Korean Assembly to the podium at the United Nations General Assembly, and from the Forbidden City in Beijing to the shadow of Mount Rushmore, I fought for you, I fought for your family, I fought for our country. Above all, I fought for America and all it stands for, and that is safe, strong, proud, and free. Now, as I prepare to hand power over to a new administration at noon on Wednesday, I want you to know that the movement we started is only just beginning. There's never been anything like it. The belief that a nation must serve its citizens will not dwindle, but instead only grow stronger by the day. As long as the American people hold in their hearts deep and devoted love of country, then there is nothing that this nation cannot achieve. Our communities will flourish, our people will be prosperous, our traditions will be cherished, our faith will be strong, and our future will be brighter than ever before. I go from this majestic place with a loyal and joyful heart, an optimistic spirit, and a supreme confidence that for our country and for our children, the best is yet to come. Thank you and farewell. God bless you. God bless the United States of America.
So that was quite an interesting speech that Trump made, actually. And superficially, you just might think it's him saying how wonderful his term in office has been and so forth. But the fact that at the end he said it's going to be a bright future and stuff is kind of odd when you think about it a bit more deeply, because if he was saying that the election was fraudulently won and basically a group of frauds have taken power, why would Trump say in his speech that the future of America was very much brighter? Surely he would be saying, if these people had won, that we're entering darker times, make some allusions to that, but he doesn't say that. So that's interesting. And the article notes, for example, the one that I mentioned, the Marshall Report article, about the Capitol grounds having been laid out by secret societies in the shape of a pentagram, stuff like that. That's all true. But just a word of sort of caution here, I suppose you might say, or just the way I look at this. Patriotism and thoughts of patriotism can be used to manipulate people and get them to think a certain way, just like, the COVID narrative is to get you to think a certain way. And this idea of, God's nation and God's earth and all of that stuff, that can also be used to manipulate people. And I think we should be careful to separate the ideas of patriotism and religion from telling the truth and being truthful about everything. Like I've done some research into the truth about God, the truth about things to do with God, and they're just as important for me to be told the truth about as the truth about COVID, or the truth about what the White House really represents and all of that stuff. So be aware of that. I mean, this article has some interesting links at the end. For example, some stuff about Lady Gaga and the satanic influences there. Who is this guy? Apparently is he a Chinese Communist Party member? You can look at that. And apparently the shenanigans going on in various governments. The world is in shakedown. I think that's a misprint there, or is this, the word is in a shakedown? It should be the world there. But Poland government has resigned. Well, again, Italian government has resigned. Yeah, well, it hasn't actually. If you look at the article, it's part of it has resigned, or one of the members of the coalition has resigned, or something. So, not quite an accurate statement. But again, there's a lot cracking off. So I hope these are all positive developments. But I wouldn't like to give anybody a false sense of hope. But let's hope that the thrust of this article is going to play out as the way that they think it's going to play out and stuff, and as the way the Q narrative says it's going to play out. So I hope that as well as you. Okay, so moving on then, I just wanted to talk about a few COVID-related things that have come up. A couple actually. Somebody sent me this morning, in that we've got this. Sorry about the ping there. Saga, which is a British company that makes a magazine for over 50s and stuff, and they do holidays. They say that all customers must be vaccinated now. Whether they're going to do it, I don't know. So, vaccinated to travel. This is coming in now more and more. We've seen several instances of this now. I decided to write a note to these people, tell them about there being accessories to fraud. Why don't they do what Weatherspoons did, and actually look at the information and look at the challenging the narrative, rather than trying to want their customers being vaccinated with an experimental treatment. So, or injected with an experimental treatment. It's not even a vaccination if you look at this, and I'm going to keep calling it that, of course, because I've been programmed with that just like everybody else, but it's not a vaccine. So take a look at that. And see what you think. That's essentially all I was going to say for now. I am posting updates on Check the Evidence and CV Pandemic Investigation, but we'll see how this all plays out, and we will hope for the best.